Hello everyone, welcome to the Redmen TV for a Redmen TV special. We're going to be focusing on being Liverpool. I've got James Pearce of The Athletic, who's written a fantastic in-depth article, a bit of a retrospective on it. You can get that article and some of the best writing in and around not just Liverpool but world football as well by heading to theathletic.co.uk/Redmen TV. You get 50% off your yearly annual subscription with that as well. Highly recommended. But James, it was really interestingly timed because we're actually putting together a rewatch series for being Liverpool, and when I saw the article I was like, oh, this is just perfect. What was it like going back and revisiting that? Because I mean, it really shocked me to think that it's 8 years old at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it was interesting. I think first of all, kind of obviously at the moment, like everyone, you're kind of thinking of trying to be as creative as you can and trying to think of ideas. Well, we haven't got any live stuff to watch, and I really enjoyed the second series of Sunderland Till I Die, and you suddenly thought actually Liverpool's a bit of a trailblazer there. When you think in recent years, Man City, Tottenham, obviously that one's yet to come out, Barcelona, Juventus. So and obviously it was kind of scoffed at the time when Liverpool did it, but you'd have to say it was ahead of its time in terms of how many clubs now see the immense value in going down that route. I think it was interesting rewatching it. Well, I've got it on DVD, so I sat down and watched all 6 episodes kind of back to back, and obviously parts of it you do cringe at. But I think the massive thing for me watching it was just it actually felt a lot longer than 8 years ago when you think of where Liverpool Football Club is now compared to then, because you've got dramatic background music announcing a Europa League qualifier against Gommel, and it's like, the hushed tones as like Samad Yezel is being given a guided tour of Melwood. Yeah, and you just think, God, it's this Liverpool Football Club. Then compared to now is like the difference between night and day. Yeah, no, it's incredible.
It's funny because like I say, I've been holding back on it, but I remember it. So much of it I remember so vividly because we ended up doing a parody video of it when it was all finished, because it was ripe. It was there, and it's funny, isn't it? Because I think it's fair to say, some people came out of it okay, but people don't really remember the things that came out okay. Brendan Rodgers in one, I think. At best, people felt a bit sorry for him. At worst, I think people made their minds up on him. And probably he never really recovered from that for some people.
Yeah, I think, again, watching it back, what really struck me was, how unhelpful it was for Brendan Rodgers. I think when for all the stick he took at the time, and of course, some of that stick was justified with some of the one-liners that he came out with, and I think, the 3 envelopes, of course, he got a lot of stick for that as well. But I think you've got to put it in the context of. I think that was important to try and re-emphasise. So I think a lot of people almost misunderstood that it was somehow Rodgers wanted to be part of it. He was very much told, we have already agreed this. Speaking to Michael Bloom, who was the head of original planning at Fox, and Scott Boggins, who was the executive producer of the series, they'd gone across to Melwood twice in the March of 2012. And, first of all, to present to Kenny Dalglish and his staff. Secondly, to present to the players. So, they started filming in the April. So when Rodgers walks in the June and then pre-season starts in the July, he doesn't have any role to play in it. And I think, as Jamie Carragher rightly pointed out in the piece, say if Jurgen Klopp had come in that summer, you could envisage a situation where Jurgen Klopp, with the experience and how comfortable he is in it himself, would probably just go, you've done what? You've signed up to what? Forget that. You can cancel that now. I don't care how much it costs to renege on the agreement or whatever. But of course, Brendan Rodgers, 39 years of age, come from Swansea. He clearly didn't feel as if he was in a position to even debate that issue. Filming was already underway, and I just think it was massively unhelpful for him, because hard enough trying to get to grips with the huge leap from Swansea to Liverpool. The last thing he needed was cameras following him around.
There's probably a degree, and maybe this is just me reading between the lines on it though, is that you're right. I don't think it's definitely not helpful, and equally absolutely Brendan Rodgers is not going to come in having acquired one of his dream jobs. That he's going to come in and rock the boat. But I wonder whether there's just a sense for someone like him coming in where he's probably thinking, this is the big leagues. This is what it's all about. This is who I am. This is part and parcel of what it is. You know what I mean? I'm now at a big club. It struck me that he embraced it for better and for ill. And I mean, we can speculate on his motivations, I guess, but I don't think there's any doubt that he accepted the fact that it was going on and he put himself to the forefront of it.
Yeah, I think what would have been very interesting is you can imagine how different that series would have been if Kenny Dalglish had kept his job, because there's no way that Kenny would have embraced it to the extent that Brendan did, with taking the film crew around his house, introducing them to the family. Of course, it was during that trip that the camera panned onto the portrait of Brendan on the wall, and I just think things like that probably didn't do him a favour, because it kind of fueled this thing of how big is this guy's ego.
Yeah. When
as I pointed out in the piece, that portrait was a gift to him from a group of disabled fans in Swansea, and I think if that had been pointed out in being Liverpool, probably would have saved him a bit of grief. And of course, some of the other one-liners that he came out with about you educate players, you only train dogs, and every player is like a son to me, and player plus environment equals behaviour, and all these. Of course, they make you cringe a bit, and I think probably at times maybe he was playing up to the cameras, but I just, as I think a couple of people pointed out that I spoke to, it would have been a very different programme, I think, if it had been filmed 12 months later, because I think for a start it would have been a lot more interesting, because that 2013-14 season was unbelievable in terms of the momentum it generated. But also I think you'd have seen a different Brendan Rodgers, because I think by then he'd got his feet under the table, and I don't think he'd have come across anywhere near as badly as he did. And I think you only had to see, he probably learnt some harsh lessons himself from that being Liverpool series, because he is the way that he comes across now is very, very different to Rodgers of that summer of 2012.
Absolutely, and obviously in that interim he'd managed to get his teeth sorted and lost a couple of stone as well, so he'd have been fighting fit for a series later on. It's interesting, isn't it, because you read the reactions in the piece, and I think one thing that come across, which again people probably don't talk about, but I think was generally accepted of Rodgers, is the reaction the young players had to it. You obviously spoke to Adam Morgan and Jay Spearing as well, and they both, like, the three envelopes thing is one of the most infamous moments in it, as being a bit like a bit of those kind of like middle management training course style things, and yet you see the reaction from the younger lads, and they both admitted to walking away going, God, I hope I'm not in those envelopes, and none of us really thought of that.
Yeah, I think they both said they rang their parents and said, yeah, we're going to guess what. He's got 3 names written down of people that are going to let him down this season. And, oh, shit, I hope I'm not one of them. So, yeah, whilst, you contrast that to Jamie Carragher, who said, it was obvious to him from the start it was a motivational trick that, that Ferguson had used previously, and that, he said probably Ferguson got it off Jock Steam before that. The difference was that they didn't have camera crews around. But I think, yeah, that was the interesting thing, the different way in which people remember it, because for those younger players especially, they absolutely loved being a part of it, and they remember just how brilliant those Rodgers training sessions were, and that tour of America. And I think Ryan McLaughlin, I loved some of his kind of stories looking back on that period when, I didn't realise that game in Boston, which figured quite heavily in it, was Ryan McLaughlin's first senior Liverpool game for the club. And he talked about Daniel Craig coming into the dressing room and shaking all their hands, and he's like, this is mad. I was playing at home with my mates in Belfast a few weeks ago. Now I'm playing for Liverpool in front of 40,000. I've just shook the hand of James Bond. And then he walks out and he's marking Francesco Totti. So, for him, that series, sticking that on is like, wow, what memories are these? Now playing for Rochdale. Similar with Adam Morgan. He was held up in that series by Rodgers to all the young players, including Raheem Sterling, as like this is the kid that you need to follow. His attitude is the example for all of you. So yeah, that was interesting. Obviously, the Rodgers Sterling spat. It's probably one of the things that people remember more than anything else, and that was interesting as well. I had no idea that there'd been quite such a kind of a ding dong, probably between the club and Fox in terms of what, if any, of that was going to get aired, because I was told there was this kind of committee that discussed anything that Liverpool weren't happy about, and when they got sent the rough footage, and I think initially Liverpool were keen for that to get left out completely. I think probably Fox, thinking about ratings and all the rest of it, thought, well, no, we need this in, and in the end, FSG essentially kind of said, that no, it stays, but it was I think Michael Bloom from Fox said it was an edited version of it that went in. But even that was interesting, speaking to the other players who were part of that session and talking about how Sterling felt like he'd been fouled, and that was what had generated the what ended up being a bit of an infamous bust-up.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? What was your take from speaking to people about the? I don't think the best way to phrase this, but it was very much a piece of content or a series built for an American audience. And if you speak to like Dave Kirby, and he I think he didn't realise it was going to be aired over here. There's a few people who probably felt that. Did Liverpool have any say in that to your knowledge, or was that just is that the production company, or is that Channel 5 seeking it out and picking it up? Because I think the most damaging aspect of it ended up being that it ends up on national TV and ends up being something to be pilloried.
Yeah, well, I think again, speaking to the people involved, there was never any doubt from the word go what Liverpool's motivation was, and that was to reach new fans and raise the club's profile, primarily in America, but also in Asia, where they I think FSG at the time felt quite rightly that there was massive opportunities to expand the club's reach. So and then that was speaking to Michael Bloom from Fox and Scott Boggins, the producer, clearly they're very proud of this piece of work. I think there's probably a bit of a misconception, because we think of the envelopes and we think of the Harley Davidson and the Ian Air infamous 69 joke, that you just think everyone involved with being Liverpool must just think, oh God, don't mention it, kind of thing. But it's just not the case. You speak to those guys who put it together, and they said the feedback they got from the hierarchy at Liverpool was good. It was, this is what we wanted. It was a product to try and bring in new fans. And in fact, reading the comments on my Athletic article yesterday, there was quite a few American subscribers saying, I became a Liverpool fan off the back of being Liverpool, which I guess for FSG and for Bloom and Boggins, that's job done.
Yeah.
In terms of, I think, but clearly when you go back over it and you watch it and you speak to people at all different levels, Liverpool players, staff, the fans that were in it, you kind of think, it kind of rams home to you the challenge of creating something that is going to appeal to like your die-hard Liverpool fans, but at the same time, try and bring in new supporters. So I think Michael Bloom said in the piece that Fox even showed it on like the National Geographic channel, because there was this idea of we don't want to just be preaching to the converted. This is something we want to reach out to new people, and I think you also have to put that series in the context of Liverpool Football Club at that time, because it wasn't that long after the Luis Suarez, Patrice Evra race row, and I think that had been probably the previous, it's probably 5-6 months before that deal was struck on being Liverpool, and so there'd been a lot of negativity, and that had kind of reverberated, not just in the UK but around the world. This row that of course, with the benefit of hindsight, wasn't handled well by Liverpool. So I think there was this thought of, do you know what? There's this amazing history to this special football club that we need to tell people about. It's some people probably have only heard of Liverpool for bad reasons in the last 6-9 months. So I think that was also part of it, and that's why despite the fact that not surprisingly Ian Air didn't want to be a part of the piece I wrote, because I doubt whether he looked upon it too fondly, and of course, Brendan Rodgers would rather forget it. But I think in the grand scheme of things, it actually served a purpose for Liverpool. And, of course, Klopp has taken things on to the absolute next level in terms of Liverpool's global profile with the success. But it certainly did open up the club to a new audience.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you're right in that. I think about the amount of, I mean, even just not necessarily you're gaining hardcore fans, but I think about casual sports fans, and I think about I'm not really a particular. I'm nowhere near the fan of any other sport that I am of football, and therefore of Liverpool. But all the casual teams that I hold even a slight affinity for have come from mad sources, whether it's like coming from movies or coming from TV shows. And I guess you're right in terms of those documentaries. There'd be tons of people, who follow American sports teams based on the equivalents. And I find that period really interesting because you're right in terms of it being, you go back 8 years. That's like the foundation season really for what we've kind of got now, and it doesn't get recognised because Klopp gets so much of the kudos for it. But that's whether it's because it was solid foundations being put in place then, or whether it was a learning curve of don't have this as the foundations. It is a unique insight, really, isn't it, into particularly FSG's ownership, I think. And as you say, it's a little time capsule to the not quite the very start, but the start of the beginning of where we are now, really.
Yeah. And I think one of the other things that struck me was, if that happened now, you think there's absolutely no chance that gets aired on Channel 5 in the UK. Yeah. You think of the battle that would be, and that kind of showed where Liverpool were at the time as well. That you can guarantee that Fox would have tried to have have kind of done presentations to all the channels, and the fact that Channel 5 took it, and it just, I suppose the shame is it doesn't capture a particularly impressive spell in Liverpool's history. That's the thing. I think it's interesting to kind of ram home to you how far Liverpool have come, but actually, as a snapshot from April to September in 2012, you've got the end of Dalglish's reign, and then the overhaul that summer. When you think there wasn't a director of football, of course, Comolli had gone just before Kenny. You had a situation where the only real two major signings that summer were Barini and Joe Allen, who was essentially that wasn't any great kind of there wasn't really a scouting network. It was I think that was before certainly Barry Hunter and Dave Fallows came in. So essentially Rodgers was going, well, I'll have Joe Allen because I've worked with him previously. I've worked with Barini previously. And then some random deals like Usama Assaidi pops up in being Liverpool, and again talked about like he's going to be like the new kid on the block and all the rest of it. And I'm not even sure Assaidi ever even graced the Premier League. I think he might have played in a few League Cup games. So yeah, it does. I suppose that's the shame, really. That probably if Liverpool were spectacularly bad at that time, it probably would have been even better viewing for the neutrals or whatever. Or if Liverpool were absolutely brilliant, I think it would have been fascinating for Liverpool fans. But it was just at that time Liverpool weren't horrendously bad, and they weren't very good, and the club wasn't in a particularly great position because it was going through this big period of transition. Yeah,
it's quite funny actually, the Assaidi stuff, because I bumped into Ian Ayre randomly in Schiphol Airport, flying back from Chris's stag do, and he let slip in a random offhand comment about Liverpool needing bodies, and then a couple of weeks later Assaidi had been signed, which kind of told you everything really what Liverpool felt about him. But I think what's interesting now, and this goes, it's a couple of things. It's quite stark in so much as it makes you realise that at the time we probably thought Liverpool were in good shape. Weirdly, and some of the players were better than they were, etc., etc. But it's kind of also nice that to be able to go back and look at these things now and understand that you can, because we know the ending ends up, the real ending where we are now is a much healthier position. That I guess it's probably easier viewing now than maybe it would have been 4 or 5 years ago.
Yeah, I think that's right, because I think I think you're right. You go back to when Liverpool weren't having success, and it was I think it would have infuriated you watching it, because you were thinking, this is this is just a bit embarrassing. The one-liners and of course, Brendan got the David Brent tag for some of the things he said, and the stuff with the Air on the Harley Davidson. And I think it would have now, because it's a bit further on and we've seen this amazing transformation in the club. I think you can now kind of appreciate it just for what it was at that time, and it does make you fully appreciate the amazing strides forward that have been taken. And and I think also, I think you look at the way that the club does things now. They've kind of like picked certain things from being Liverpool was the first time I can remember things like the footage at home with Steven Gerrard opening his family home up to you had Lucas Leiva doing the same, Pepe Reina, Jay Spearing at the academy with Jamie Carragher doing stuff, and that was kind of the first time that the club had done that. And of course, I think where they've probably learned in recent years, they've kind of picked certain bits. I think probably that worked in being Liverpool, and that people actually enjoyed that insight. And now we kind of see that, and how brilliant the club's social media output is in terms of the videos that they put together, and of course it's just probably a more shrewd and cluey way of doing things, because that way now with what they do, they still give people that insight that then is massively popular. Fans love seeing it, but it's also they have that control that they didn't have complete control of for being Liverpool. Because I think that was the other thing that had always kind of, when I think back to being Liverpool, I always thought, well, what control did Liverpool have? Like, how did the 69 joke get in there? How did someone watch that and go, well, fans will love Ian Ayre on the Harley, and some of the Rodgers things. And the interesting thing was that it wasn't a case of sending Liverpool a raw copy and going, take out what you want and send it back, which I get the impression that is now the deal with something like the Man City one with Amazon. It's very slick, certainly not warts and all. But as Scott Bloom, the producer, told me when I was doing the piece, he said it was more an editorial consultation that was the agreement. He said that the deal from the start was, we will not reveal strategy and tactics. That is a promise. If there's anything in any of this footage that you feel could give an opponent a professional advantage, then without no discussion we'll take it out. But in terms of the personal stuff, it was very much a kind of back and forth discussion. Yeah. And if Fox wanted to keep something in, then essentially FSG had the deciding vote. And of course, because in the States there was very much this culture already of these kind of shows. I think Michael Bloom talks about Hard Knocks, which follows a different NFL team each year, being a real inspiration for being Liverpool. So, I think more often than not, FSG kind of sided with Fox on the basis, well, we don't want it to be too dull. We don't want it to be too controlled, and we want people to see people's personalities. And, and of course, Liverpool did flag up the Sterling thing. They flagged up, interestingly, only little things like they flagged up the picture on the wall of Rodgers, but that still ended up getting shown. They also flagged up some footage of Rodgers, kind of what Liverpool were worried could be perceived as kind of boasting about his new car, and so little things like that were, I got told, were flagged up by this committee. But it certainly wasn't like Liverpool having blanket control of things, and even that shows how things have shifted now, because there is absolutely no way on this earth that a Premier League club now would agree to that kind of show.
No, absolutely.
Under those kind of terms.
It's true, and just from personal experience of it, Liverpool, the red tape you've got to go through to get anything is so, that kind of stuff. If you ever work with Liverpool on any level, work with the players and all that kind of stuff, the control and the amount of people it's got to get past in order to be made public. And I suppose that's, for better or for worse, the knock-on impact of being Liverpool. Just one thing I think is interesting, because we've mentioned it a couple of times. I do wonder. And whether it was just, as you say, in terms of the time, and like if it was being made now, and Brendan and Jurgen Klopp said something along the lines of someone being the Welsh savvy, and if Peter Moore was riding a Harley down the Strand, I don't think people would care. I wonder whether that was a combination of the time, and I think obviously we're all a bit more savvy in Liverpool are a bit more clued up around that stuff, and fans are a bit more accepting of all that stuff. But also, I think, as you say, it was just probably the wrong men at the wrong time for the thing ultimately.
Yeah, 100%. Because also, I think, no, the reality is that if you're successful and you're winning football matches, nobody really gives a damn what you come out and say. That's the reality of it. And I remember in that 13-14 season, Rodgers would still come out with, he would talk in press conferences about flipping triangles and the single pivot and getting up in the middle of the night and making himself toast and coming up with a new tactical plan. And I remember he described Harry Redknapp once as being a wonderful chemist, and and things like that. When you're winning games, everyone just nods and goes, yeah, spot on, yeah, absolutely spot on. But the problem is when you're not winning, then those things are used as a stick to beat you with. And so you're absolutely right. I think because if something like that was aired now with the success that Liverpool have had in the last couple of years, a lot of those things that were torn to shreds in being Liverpool would be forgiven. But it just the timing of it, even the timing of it in terms of when it was actually shown on TV, because I think it was mid-September to mid-October, and I'm pretty sure that season Liverpool didn't even win a Premier League game till the very end of September. It was an absolutely disastrous start. There was the horrendous defeat at West Brom on the opening day. Of course, unlucky not to beat Man City with the Skirtle back pass that Tevez punished. But after that, there were some pretty ropey performances. So I think it was more also the fact that when it was aired, fans were genuinely worried. You had the absolute nightmare end to the window as well, when even that is a period that you look back on and cringe a bit, where the footage where you've got Aaron Rodgers kind of a bit gutted that Clint Dempsey had come to Liverpool and that Jordan Henderson wasn't prepared to go in the other direction, that effectively killed the deal. So yeah, I think the fact that it came out at a time as well where Liverpool had got off to such a poor start in the season and fans were worried, I think all of that added to this kind of like, oh God, this is not massively helpful at this time. It would be absolutely brilliant to see a Klopp one. I think it would be absolutely fascinating, and of course Scott Boggins in the piece talks about how he would absolutely love to do a follow-up one, but I think we all know that there's absolutely no chance of that happening.
Well, Klopp basically said, didn't he, last season? This season. It's still this season. With the Red Bull Salzburg stuff.
Yeah.
That like if someone said to him, "I'm bringing a camera into your dressing room," I'd walk out. That'd be done. So yeah, can't see that happening anytime soon. So until then, we've just got being Liverpool to fall back on. Fascinating stuff. Make sure everyone goes and checks out the piece on The Athletic, and you can get a 50% discount off your yearly subscription by going to theathletic.co.uk/Redmen TV on that one.